Hey, welcome to our one viewer that's watching right now.
We already got one.
We got one viewer.
That's huge.
That's right. So here's what we're doing. John and I decided we want to do another show. You got your sports show. I've got my morning talk shows. But we wanted to get one together and maybe take the rails off just a little bit. We try on K-ROG to be very middle of the road, and so we moderate our opinions, I'd say significantly, about things going on in the world, and we thought we might just have a little fun and undo that a little bit. Undo it a little bit. And so I think I'm going to adjust that a little because that'll make Tom happier. So now we're one third. We're a little better there, a little better framing on our camera. So I think we're going to call this the Unoffendable Show.
Yes.
And the idea of that being is in today's modern American culture, offense is the highest thing to be attained. If you can claim that you're offended by something or someone, then you have rights.
That's
you have
right.
the right to make demands on people or society that they should then cater to you because you're offended, and that offends me.
Well, and it's a breakdown. When we get offended by politics or anything really,
Right.
it breaks down communication.
Absolutely.
Because as soon as you tell me what your thoughts are, I'm like, oh, I'm offended.
Well, and then you then have the right to discount what I'm saying.
Sure.
You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to engage my arguments on any rational or logical level. You can just say, oh, I'm offended, and then therefore I don't have to hear what you have to say.
That's right.
And I'm committed to not being that way. I won't get offended. I mean, that's tough. It's a tough thing to do. But I think that's where we need to go as a society, is get rid of this politics of offense and just say, I think our country's built on being offended.
Yeah, and I think, too, if you could break that down, like, we're attempting to do, we've got several viewers, I'm sure hundreds.
Four right now.
If we could break that down into, let's say you're on one side, I'm on the other, and we could get past this, I'm offended, there might be some middle of the road compromise or I can at least respect you don't believe the way I do, I don't believe the way you do, and we can walk away happy at the end of the day.
It could happen, but it's probably unlikely John and I are going to get into an argument about much on here.
Yeah.
We're pretty white guys.
Yeah, I think we think along the same lines for the most part.
I think we do too. But we'd like to have some guests on here, and maybe we'll agree with them, and maybe we won't. But we're not going to get offended.
Yeah, and I think that's the idea, is having guests that maybe don't agree with what we, so we can put it to the test to see if we do get offended.
That's right.
I'm a little different than you. I'm learning not to be offended.
Well, I'm learning too. Don't get me wrong.
There's, we're all so rooted in how we grew up, and we're also rooted in our communities, and so it's hard for me to fathom, when someone believes different than me, maybe they grew up in a situation that's a lot different than mine. So, it's hard for me to understand how they believe that way. But until you sit down and you break down all the barriers and listen to each other, it's until then we can actually start making some progress.
Right. And I know what you're saying. I mean, it's really hard for me to understand people that go, and a lot of people do, go, socialism, we could do a little.
Yeah.
We could use a little bit of that. And, my reaction is, how could you possibly think that? But that doesn't do any good for me to react that way. I need to, how could you possibly think that? And I need to know and understand where you're coming from, and someone that thinks that way is coming from that, because then maybe we can come to some common ground.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree. It's funny because I had a conversation with a friend of mine from the military, and they live on the West Coast, and we'll chat from time to time on, we are polar opposites in how we see something. And I will listen to about anything, but he brought up socialism, and I'm like, well, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And so maybe I am offended by certain stuff. But I'm like you. I can't fathom when someone brings up socialism how we see it that way.
Right. Well, socialism promises free housing, free clothes, free food, free everything. Do you know who gets free housing, free clothes, free medical care and everything? Slaves do.
Yeah.
Slaves do.
Yeah.
Or prisoners. And so that, to me, is the promise of socialism, is slavery or prisonhood. Because we're going to take care of everything, but you have no freedom. And I know that there are obviously millions of people that think, no, you can have socialism and still freedom. That's never happened.
Yeah.
It's never happened. It's not going to happen here. I just don't get it. But
any control, and we weren't designed to be federally regulated.
Never.
And so any time control is lost and given, to the federal powers,
Right.
You have to give up a certain amount of freedom.
Right.
Well,
and maybe before we get too far down this rabbit hole, I know a lot of our viewers on K-ROG know who we are, but you're a military veteran, Army Ranger, psychologist.
Yeah. Little to no psychology, but yeah. So so that means a lot to me. And then you go to flip the tables, and I guess we're introducing each other.
I get a little bit.
You spent your life in the law,
right?
And so both of us kind of come, look at things through those lenses of military law, and I think that's going to make for a great show. Well,
I think it will be too. And of course, if people want to jump on and add comments and things like that, and hopefully we can get some interesting guests on here as time goes on. But from a legal perspective, we talk about our country. It's a very unique design.
It is.
With a federal government, we are a collection of small countries. Was how we were built. We have 50 independent nations that all came together under one federal government to cooperate on some things. And that's what happened 200 years ago. But over time, we gave our rights to the state or the local government because it was founded on we retain all rights. That's the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. All rights are therefore reserved to the people, and then we give some up to the states, and then the states give them to the federal government. And now 200 years later, everybody thinks the federal government is the highest authority, which is actually completely upside down.
That is correct.
From the way our country was designed. And so I think just that difference in perspective is where we get a lot of difference of opinions.
Yeah, and it's I try to live black and white. I think anytime you start going into the gray, you start compromising something.
Absolutely.
And if you look at and I love my country, I love our government, all this stuff, but you start looking at how the powers from the states have been stripped or manipulated. It has been in the last 20 years, 30 years that's been a big time issue. Yeah,
it has. And someday we'll talk about the 16th Amendment, which is where I trace back a lot of our problems. Was the ratification of the 16th Amendment. And this doesn't have to, I don't expect this to be a completely political show. We can talk about religion. I've been serving as an elder at my church for 6 years. I'm on sabbatical this year. I'm on the teaching team. I do some preaching now and then. So I'd love to delve into that. I think it all goes in together and talk about, where our faith interacts with culture and society. I think that's a big piece of this too.
I think it's huge.
And all of that. So this is kind of our introductory show. We're going to try to do these on Tuesdays. Might switch them up to Thursdays, actually. We'll talk about that off the air. But anyway, if you're interested in this, we'd love to hear from you. If you want some topics you want to send them in, just send them to I'm Worsham at KROGTV.com. You can send them right in. We'll be happy to talk about them. John, anything else you want to bring up today?
No, I'm excited. I was actually supposed to be here at 11:30, folks.
Well, I don't know if that was my mistake either, but
the show. Hopefully, our shows will be a little longer than this. But I'm excited. We're excited. We hope we have a lot of guests in here. We hope this is a common sense approach to, just sitting down and have a conversation.
Just have a conversation and not get offended.
There you go.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.